The other thing that I wanted to talk about is just, expectations for these quarterbacks. We've seen WSU be an absolute quarterback factory, breaking records the past couple of years. Obviously, Leach is not here, and these guys aren't, they don't have a lot of experience. So, I mean, what are we going to see from whoever wins this job? We don't need to have that argument again. We've been there. If you want to go watch that, go look on the YouTube channel. But whoever the starting quarterback is, like, what are we going to see from them?
Well, from the looks of it, from all these pressers that we've seen, it looks like we're just going to see a full-out competitor. And I know that is kind of, you want a competitor at the quarterback position, of course, but all of these quarterbacks, as teammates and coaches, all have to say the same thing: is they're all competitive and they're all talented. And they all understand the situation that they're in right now. We're not having a JUCO savior come in, and we're not having the mythical man with the mustache come in. So these guys they know that the situation that they're in is unlike anything else. They have a month to get ready for their first game. They just put on pads the other day.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because everyone's got their own storyline, right? I mean, Kammen's been sitting on the bench for all these years, a 4-star recruit. You think that he's one of the front runners, and then you look at a guy like Gunnar Cruz. He's got a big athletic frame and can pass the ball downfield, similar to an Anthony Gordon level deep ball. And then Jaden DeLora is, of course, that guy that Rolovich has scouted himself and has brought to Pullman with him. So everyone's got a different storyline. Everybody's got a different, everyone's got a different label associated with their name. And it's going to be interesting to see who's going to be the starter. Because although I thought maybe Kammen or Gunnar is going to be the front runner, it looks like a 3-way tie right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I think, bringing it back to expectations, what should we expect from whoever steps on the field? We may see a rough start. These guys are going to be taking their first collegiate snaps after a pandemic off season. Like, it's not going to be smooth sailing. Like, yes, it is Oregon State. It's not Oregon, but that doesn't mean that, that's not to say that they can't go out there and absolutely kill it, but don't expect, 400 yards game one. Bringing it back to 2018, I remember that Gardner Minshew game against Wyoming. A lot of people, friends of mine, people on Twitter were not happy with how he was playing. But you have to give it time. These guys can learn the system as much as they can, in the off season. But until you get into game action, like, that's a totally different story. So I definitely think, go for it.
I was just going to say, no, that's a great point you bring up with Minshew. I remember going to those first couple of games and going, who's this? And then he blew up the way that he did. And Anthony Gordon was a little bit of a different story. I remember the first games I saw of him. I just remember, I believe it was week one in the first half. He had like 100% completion percentage with a couple hundred yards. I was like, wow, this guy's kind of interesting. And, and he kind of remained a consistent throwing 400, 500 yards a game, but he knew the system from a year prior. So that's what
years and years prior.
Yeah. So that's it. Just all these bits and pieces play into. Does that mean if Kammen's the starter, is he going to have an Anthony Gordon level of success? Does that mean if Jaden DeLora is the starter, is he going to have a Gardner Minshew level of success in week one? That's another thing to take into account. Is this is a brand new system. However, there's so much to decipher just with these three guys alone that it's really interesting. I think this is probably one of the most interesting quarterback competitions in the Pac-12, to be honest.
Oh, I think for sure. And also, Anthony Gordon looked great in his first game, but it was against like a Northern Arizona or something. Like,
these guys
these guys aren't getting thrown straight into Pac-12 competition. And, like I said, Oregon State's not Oregon, but they've got talented guys on that defense. It's not going to be, just an easy game where you can pick somebody apart. And another thing I think that we should expect, just from hearing Rolovich kind of talk about this competition and about his philosophy, is like, don't expect that whoever takes the first snap might not, take every snap. He's talked about he's not afraid to play whoever he thinks gives them the best chance. That means if somebody struggles, he'll pull the plug. That means if somebody presents a better matchup, he'll do it. He talked about kind of doing that at Hawaii when he benched Cole McDonald, who was having a great season and a great career there. So I think just because whoever goes out on the field to take the first snap, that doesn't mean that they're getting all 7 games. Obviously, it's their job to lose, and if they go out there and play great, they've got that. But this is going to be a competition that isn't just decided in early November. Be an ongoing competition unless somebody really pulls away. So I think that's another thing is that we may see multiple people and not just in blowout mop up duty. Like we may see guys get opportunities in games. So I think that's another thing to watch out for.
Well, it'd be interesting to see multiple quarterbacks play into this offense, considering Rolo's last team in Hawaii, he played with Cole McDonald the past 2 years, who was right up there with Anthony Gordon. And
Yeah.
the interesting thing about McDonald with that run and shoot, I mean, he was not only a passing threat, but he got around 7 rushing touchdowns last year alone.
Yeah,
And
he was mobile.
yeah, he made plays. That's the biggest attribute in being a quarterback, right? It's not just the running or the throwing, or it's just being able to make plays. That's what separates the Baker Mayfields and the Patrick Mahomeses. It's being able to make plays. That's what made Gardner Minshew so electric when he was here, was being able to make plays and being able to improvise and go through all your reads. That's what it's going to come down to. I think all 3 of these candidates have that ability. All 3 of those candidates have somewhat of a mobile aspect to their game and can throw the ball downfield. If they didn't, they wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
So it's just going to come down to who can make plays for this team with a new offense and who's going to electrify Cougar football in the future.
Yeah, and I think that opportunity to do that is going to be down the stretch. I made a note of just whoever gets it, if they do get off to a rough start, they have to finish strong. If you look at those last 3 games that are scheduled, minus the crossover game, you're talking, UW, USC, Cal. UW and Cal have, good defenses for all intents and purposes, and they've Gardner Minshew had his worst game against UW. Anthony Gordon didn't have his best game against UW, so those are going to be the real tests.
It was the UW defense and a ton of snow, Cody.
Yeah, that's true. But if you look at it, like it's the way those defenses play, because Cal runs the same defense and they give them trouble too. So whoever has that opportunity, it's going to be down the stretch. It's going to be those games. If somebody's able to, just like Rolovich, if he makes, if he wins the Apple Cup, he's set. If a quarterback, whoever's starting in that game or comes in that game and wins the Apple Cup, like they've won the fans over right away.
Yep.
So it's those 3 games, and then because you'll forget about what happens at the start of this season based on how a guy does at the end. We've seen that, we know that. So it may take a game or 2 to flesh this quarterback competition out. A month may not be enough. We don't have spring ball. We don't have a spring game. So, we're going to see that down the stretch. And I think that leads into something with this is like whoever does end up with that job, like this is going to be the first time in 2 or 3 years that this whole offseason WC is going to have a starting quarterback. We will have that sense of security, and that's going to be huge. So this is a big thing to win. So whoever's able to win over the fans and the teammates and the coaching staff down the stretch, I mean, it is set up for a decent amount of time.
Yeah, most definitely. We got the running back set, we got the receiver set, the O-line seems set. Now we just got to see who's going to take the snaps.